So here I am again, feeling like talking to people with the hope that you might find it helpful. So what I want to talk about today is silence. Yes, because silence, though it is sometimes extremely golden, and I'm a great fan of silence, generally speaking, in certain situations silence is deadly. And one of the situations where silence is deadly is where abuse is involved. And in Tibetan Buddhism, there's this instruction that you're not allowed to criticize your teacher. Now, the way I see it is the reason behind that is, and this is just talking about once you've actually accepted someone as your teacher. Now, the idea is you're supposed to examine the teacher very, very carefully, and before you kind of go, yep, this guy's my teacher, and, you know, I'm going to take tantric empowerments from him, and that kind of thing. You're supposed to have examined this teacher really well, so that by the time you do that, you're supposed to be quite committed, and you are supposed to be able to say, yep, that guy's good, you know, I can go with him, and I can, you know, really commit myself to him and his words and this kind of stuff. What tends to happen in the West is, you know, we toddle off to a retreat and it's just all lovely. And the Lama sits there and, you know, and he says, look at me. So you look at him and the atmosphere is wonderful and you go, wow, this is really good, you know. And before you know it, you've been told that, oh, you know, you've had an introduction to the nature of mind and you have a samaya with the teacher, which means that he's your teacher, and that means that you're not allowed to criticize him. And it can happen like that. You know, it happened like that in Rigpa. I didn't have time, I didn't examine the teacher. He just suddenly, I had what I thought was an experience of the nature of mind. It doesn't really matter what it was. The thing is, it was a great kind of peak experience, and it's very seductive. So, yeah, so you find yourself with the teacher and, you know, willing to say, yeah, this person's my teacher. And even if you haven't had actually tantric empowerments with the teacher, if you've had the nature of mind empowerment, that's the greatest empowerment. Now, if you don't know about any of this, it really doesn't apply to you. But, you know, when it's made quite clear that you've made this, that she's now your teacher, and then all the teachings that you're given say, well, you know, once someone's your teacher, you're not allowed to criticize them. And that might sound insane. It's like, what do you mean you're not allowed to criticize them? Well, the thing is, it was within the belief system. If you criticize your teacher, you break samaya, which is like a sacred bond, and you're supposed to go to Vajra hell, which is the worst possible hell. Okay, so, you know, looking outside of the tradition, that all just looks really ridiculous, you know. It's like, what? I mean, you have to believe in hell for a start. So, you know, I never really believed in hell, but I did believe, and I still believe, in hellish mental states. I think if you're really angry and bitter about it, you know, anger and bitterness is a hellish state. So if you do it, you know, just you know, keep the good stuff in your heart so that you don't fall into a really uncomfortable, unpleasant, hellish kind of mind state. So, you know, that's the sort of side of it that's, you know, yeah, logical and fine. But when that becomes a way to gag people, that's not fine, you know, and that's what happens. You know, I think this is all fine when the guy is, you know, really awesome and someone that you really can respect. And I think the whole thing about not criticizing your teacher is designed so that you don't get caught up on petty stuff, you know. So it's like, you don't like the way he blows his nose, okay, so, you know, you don't want to waste your time letting yourself get distracted by, you know, that kind of petty stuff. So, I think there's kind of a place there, but it's not it shouldn't be you must not, you know, it shouldn't be more like well, you know, it's not actually beneficial for you if you're allowing all sorts of just little things to irritate you. But that's a very, very different thing from when you discover that, you know, your teacher is emotionally, physically and sexually abusing people. Now, when that happens, all this business of not criticizing your Lama, you know, for me, that all just goes out the window, because there's another kind of ethics comes in there, and it's a really basic human ethics, and that is that, you know, that kind of abuse, any abuse, it's just wrong, right? So, for someone who's following a teacher, a spiritual teacher, and they have this, you mustn't criticize your teacher kind of instruction on one hand, and on the other hand, they're looking at this behaviour and they're going, well, that's not right. That's a big problem for people. So, a lot of people are just too scared to say anything. So people leave, but they don't say anything. And they don't say anything, and they don't say anything. And for decades, people just keep leaving, and they don't say anything. The point is that the biggest ally that abuse has is silence. Yep, whether it's pedophilia, whether it's abuse within families, whether it's abuse within corporations, whether it's a spiritual abuse, doesn't matter what it is, the one thing that keeps it going more than anything else is people not speaking up. Freedom of speech, I mean, it is a basic human right, we should not be gagged. In a situation where you've got somebody doing something wrong, it's really important for people to speak up. And it's incredibly hard for people to do so. Why? Because so many people have an awful lot invested in silence. And so they'll go to all sorts of lengths to try and cover up abuse, to minimize it, to make the victims appear, deranged or disillusioned or mentally unstable or, otherwise unreliable. They'll call them samaya breakers. You mustn't listen to them. These people are twisted. They're in hell, all sorts of stuff. But it still comes down to the fact that you're trying to gag people, trying to keep them silent so they won't let people know the truth. Now, okay, maybe I have this very black and white view of ethics. I don't know. But to me, from my heart, from the depth of my wisdom mind, abuse has to be exposed. Just look at the general feeling of our society at the moment. Look at what's coming out with Harvey Weinstein and all these other people whose abuses are suddenly becoming out into the light. And you realise how important it is that people speak up, because nothing will change until people speak up. And so this is my plea for you to please speak up. Don't let yourself be gagged. If you're still in a sangha where something has occurred and it's not properly being dealt with, where people are still thinking that behaviour, abusive behaviour, is actually okay, is acceptable somehow. It doesn't matter what words they use or what beliefs they use to try and make that kind of behaviour acceptable. It's not acceptable. It's against the law. It's as simple as that. And until people in those situations recognise that, no, this kind of behaviour is not actually acceptable, and hey, we had a role in, covering it up or whatever, and can actually say, yeah, we got it wrong. And do something from that basis, from the basis of understanding that, yes, something was very wrong here, then it's not solved. The situation is not solved. They can put Band-Aid solutions on. They can say, oh, it's fine, we're gonna put a code of ethics into our company or our sangha or whatever, and a code of conduct to make sure that nobody does this again. And you all think it's fine, you think it's solved. But it's not solved. It's not solved until there is recognition that that community had a role in allowing this abuse to continue, and that this community had a role in supporting it. And until that community looks deeply at the reasons why this happened and pull them out, tease them out and go, where did we get it wrong? Where did we go off? Where and when did we become more cult-like and less like a loving, concerned, caring place to be? When did we stop listening to these people? When the people who complain? When did we push them aside? What made us do that? Because all of those are things that need to be sorted out. It's not about just laying a patch of a code of ethics over the top when underneath people are still believing that the Lama did nothing wrong. That's not a solution. That is not solved. It's like a cancer being treated with a Band-Aid. So don't be silent. If you're there, if you're in the Sangha, you must speak up. You must have your voices heard. If you're concerned about this, if you look at this and you go, hang on guys, you haven't solved this. Please, speak up. Because silence is deadly. Silence maintains the status quo. Silence is the biggest ally of abuse. And unfortunately, abuse in Tibetan Buddhism is not limited to Rigpa. And so if you let the beliefs that allow this kind of abuse to continue in this religion and to continue to be accepted by students, you're part of the problem. But you can be part of the solution by simply insisting that the beliefs that cause these issues are examined. Please, can we examine exactly how we interpret this this belief that we should accept everything that our Lama does as okay? Can we examine that? In light of this situation, at some point, we must have interpreted this wrongly because the behaviour was wrong. And we know the behaviour is wrong by looking at the result of it, And an ordinary Sangha member sitting there, they have not experienced the abuse itself. They haven't talked to the people who have been very, very badly hurt. And maybe they don't recognise how hurt they are. Maybe it doesn't bother some people. A lot of the people that it's bothered have actually left, But it's actually a betrayal of every single student. Because the man is not who he purported to be. And there are some who still think he's a Mahasiddha. Fine. They're welcome to that belief. But is it a healthy belief? I think that's what needs to be looked at here. Are these beliefs that we hold, are they healthy? They certainly weren't healthy. Sogyal Rinpoche said, when a whole Sangha, when people's study and practice takes them away from love and compassion and those sort of qualities, then something is off. And so you can look at Rigpa and think, oh well, the teachings were fine, but were they? Yeah, the basic teachings, sure, but there's something off in the way they were interpreted because the result was not good. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff and stuff, but if you've talked to as many people as I have who have been badly burned, and if you feel as deeply as I do my own sense of that I have been betrayed spiritually, then feel that. Just honour that and speak up. Do not be silent. Do not be silent. Say, look, this is not solved until we examine deeply, until we recognise that it's wrong, that something happened that was wrong, that we went off somewhere, and that if we want to continue, we need to look at where we went off and make real change, not Band-Aid solutions. So I honour the 8 people who wrote the letter to Sogyal Rinpoche and sent it to all the Sangha because they were brave enough to speak up. And I honour all the other people who are brave enough to speak up, to say, no, this is abuse and it is wrong. And I honour all of those people who are in touch enough with their emotions, with their feelings, that they can recognize, that they know in their gut, that they recognize that this behavior is wrong. Even if it didn't happen to you, man, happened to other people. And the beliefs that you are subscribing to are the beliefs that cause this to be facilitated, to be enabled and covered up for years, and for people still to be looking at it and thinking there is nothing wrong. There's something very, very wrong here. And if you don't say anything about it, it's going to keep on being very, very wrong. So there's a kookaburra putting his stamp of approval on this. He doesn't believe in being silent. Anyway, thanks for listening. I just want to say that this is not a tirade against Tibetan Buddhism, not at all. I have great faith in the tradition. I know there's an awful lot wrong with it in some respects, but I think it's in an interpretation of certain things. I think if we go back to the actual absolute meanings of the teachings, we will find and understand them, we will be able to apply them more intelligently to our present situation. You know, if Tibetan Buddhism wants to survive in the West, really, and not become this kind of obsolete religion, if it wants to actually be relevant, then, you know, the Lamas need to look at that, and I'm not sure that the Lamas are ever going to look at that. So it's up to us Western students to do that looking, and to make our voices heard. And, you know, this is not a rebellion. This is just a request for some intelligent examination of, you know, where it went wrong. But, you know, you can't do that until you accept that something is wrong. And as soon as you accept that something's wrong, you're going to apologise for your part in it. So, yeah. So I'd like to say thank you very much to my sponsors, because if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. Because it's not easy to do, to put yourself out there, to speak up. I know it's not easy, you know, and if you have personally been abused, then I really understand how very hard it is for you to tell your story, and yet we must hear your stories. So if you have a story to tell, please contact the What Now blog. We would love to hear from you. So thanks everyone.